am from the UK. My job is a travel blogger. I definitely have the travel bug and a travel blog. I became a Muslim 2.5 years ago. I did my Shahada, but my journey to Islam kind of started around this time of year 3 years ago, which I kind of can't believe now is 3 years. And obviously now coming up to Ramadan, it's actually going to be my 4th Ramadan, which literally kind of blows my mind, to be honest. It doesn't feel that new, I think, because I would say also I got married like 1.5 years ago. I did my nikah. And so for the last kind of year, I've obviously been living with my husband. I've got stepchildren. So we very much have like a Muslim household. I have a lot of Muslim friends here in Manchester. So it definitely does feel just this is part of me now. But I do think that has come around me and that I feel very, comfortable as well. Like, especially here in Manchester, like there's so many Muslims. It's not a Muslim majority area, but we're definitely not a minority. So I think that helps with me feeling like this is just who I am. I can imagine if it was I hadn't got married or I was still single and, maybe still traveling by myself, then I would have a different feeling. But it's definitely some things, I'm still learning things as well. So in that sense, it definitely feels new. Yeah, for me, it was mostly through travel. I've been traveling on and off for kind of it's like about 13 years now. But obviously, when I became Muslim, it was around 10 years. And I'd been to a lot of Muslim countries in the Middle East, in Asia. But it hadn't, I'd always enjoyed going to mosques and things, but never really kind of took any more of an interest. And then in 2019, I went to Pakistan. And I met some really nice people there that definitely just showed me a bit more. I guess I actually met Muslims for the first time and actually kind of connected. It's something that even though I'd lived in London as well for 2.5 years, I don't really feel like, even though again, there's so many Muslims in London, that I hadn't really ever connected with anyone. So in Pakistan, I kind of met a couple of people. That was the first time. Then I went and a few people I met there, they were Muslim, and again, maybe conversations that I'd had in Pakistan kind of led into Indonesia. And then, subhanAllah, I went to Saudi Arabia because they just opened their borders for tourism. So I spent a bit of time in Riyadh and Abha and Jeddah, and I met a lot of Muslims there and really kind of got involved with meeting some Muslim families from some ladies that I'd met, and I stayed at their house and really got welcomed in. And that's kind of what's, brought Islam to my attention and what it is to be in Saudi Arabia, with the cafes and things closing for prayer time. All of a sudden, I'd always heard the call to prayer, but never really kind of connected it with this is when you go and pray. But in Saudi, when everything closes, you realize oh wow, yeah, people are praying. And I think at this point I had been on quite a deep spiritual journey myself. Now when I look back, it's more like new age spiritualism, I guess, but it definitely opened my mind in the last few years into all sorts of things. So I think then when I started to kind of learn a little bit more about Islam through the people around me, I was very open to the idea of praying and angels, and I'd had to try to have my own kind of prayer practice before and meditation and that kind of thing, but it was never really something that stuck because there was never any set rules for it. And when I realized there are rules, and not just rules, but guidance and kind of suggestions of what you should do. Islam is a way of life. That kind of made a lot of sense to me. And then after kind of being intrigued, I did also, when I was in Saudi, I went to Medina. And whilst I was in Jeddah, I got the train to Medina, which was obviously a hugely kind of impactful experience of just experiencing how calm it was there, how peaceful, just seeing Muslims from all around the world there. That had a huge effect on me. And then not long after that, COVID hit, and all of a sudden, I was in Indonesia actually when COVID hit. I ended up staying there for 4 months on an Islamic island. I had a mosque 5 meters away from my house. My job as a travel blogger declined. There wasn't as much to do anymore. I had a lot of time to research, and then that's when I just started researching all the questions that I had about Islam, a lot of the negative things, getting answers, starting to listen to podcasts, YouTube videos. Ramadan soon approached, and I thought okay, let's try and fast. It'll be an easy it's a good way to pass a month, have something to focus on for a month. So I fasted during Ramadan, started to learn to pray because I felt very connected to that. And then a couple of months later, I knew wow, I know too much information now for this to pass me by. I can't just turn away from this right now. And then I also felt like a bit of a sponge, so much information over the last few months without being technically a Muslim. Like I felt like I couldn't learn more until I actually, took the commitment to being Muslim myself and actually started practicing this and putting this into my life, like officially. And then I did my Shahada not long after. There's so many little things that happened, in my past, and things that I decided to stop doing myself, and just ways of life that I had myself, that then I look back now and I think, yeah, it all just kind of added up into this right now. So yeah, alhamdulillah, it's a really beautiful journey. Well, for me, they kind of saw it as a gradual process as well. I mean, like I said, I wasn't at home. I've traveled a lot anyway, so I've kind of lived with my family a little bit, but I'm very independent, and that's kind of how I've grown up throughout my 20s anyway. My family definitely trust me, and I think, again, from all the travel, I've been to, like, even when I went to Saudi, my mum's like, and then, when I wants to travel India by myself, she's like, you can't travel India by yourself. I'm like, I'm going, and it's going to be fine. I've not had any issues with, I've been very responsible in my life, all the travels I've done, they haven't had to, help me with anything. And so basically, I guess what I'm saying is they do trust me. So then when it came to, saying that I wanted to become Muslim, they were just like, okay, we don't really understand what that means, but like, we trust you. They knew that I'd been fasting for Ramadan because I'm in Indonesia. I've got friends here, they're fasting, so I'm just going to give it a go. And then they knew that I'd been learning as well. And again, because at this point, I didn't share this that much online on Instagram, but I shared bits here and there. Like during Ramadan, I shared that I was fasting. I shared that I was reading the Quran. And they, my mum anyway, she does follow me on Instagram. So she kind of saw that anyway. And even then later on in my hijab and things, my family have seen that. And even on Facebook, where I've got closer friends and closer family members, aunties and uncles and things, like I haven't really had to say anything because they've just seen it. And so that's actually been like a really amazing kind of way that I've done it, which I know a lot of other people don't necessarily do that way, especially putting it online first. But that was like an easy break-in for me because they kind of got to see it like that. And yeah, my family, alhamdulillah, they're very easygoing anyway and trusting God for me. I think it is that idea of still trying to be the same person as before, sure that, that I haven't changed so much. I mean, obviously we all evolve anyway. I say this to friends as well, even if you haven't like done a big change, like changing your religion, you would hope that, from 3 years ago, you're a different person. It doesn't need to be like a drastic change like religion, but it could be anything. So we all evolve anyway. And I think, sometimes I look back to things and think like, oh, I miss doing that, or I wish I could do that. But then a lot of my friends who, haven't changed the religion, who I used to, maybe go out with and things, they're not necessarily they're not living that life anymore either, because they have evolved in the last 3 years. They've gotten older, their priorities have changed. But I think it is just, making sure that I've been quite conscious that I haven't kind of lost touch with, my friends from before, things that I used to enjoy doing, and not putting too much pressure on myself. I think that one of the biggest struggles of being a revert, which alhamdulillah I didn't really experience, but I think that I didn't experience this because I was very aware of it before doing my Shahada, is the pressure from other people. Again, like as soon as I shared online that I'm Muslim, like people like, what are you going to change your name to? I'm like, I don't need to change my name. And I think if you don't have that knowledge beforehand, and you are maybe slightly impressionable, maybe because of how you became Muslim, maybe it was through a slightly more emotional route or something, or people around you, then that can be hard, that pressure to suddenly change your lifestyle, to suddenly change the way that you dress, change your name, change the people around you. So I was very aware from that from the start. So I don't think I had that struggle, but I definitely do still struggle with looking back at certain things and thinking like, oh, I wish I could do that. Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of maybe if I focus on the unique to me bit being a revert, I think definitely because I have, obviously it's not, a lot of people have social media platforms, but just a lot, I do share a lot on social media, for example, and I have shared a lot of social media. So there are obviously photos and videos of me like before I was Muslim, like not covered, obviously not wearing hijab. And even when I did become Muslim, I didn't wear hijab straight away. And I kind of took my time on my modesty journey. And now, I do wear hijab in like a variety of ways. And I think that it's not completely unique to me, but if I compare it to people other converts I know, it's fairly unique that other people don't necessarily have that, is that, it is just navigating that world. What do you do? Do you try and delete everything? Do you let it bother you? you? Do you still take your own time? You know, telling you shouldn't, when I wear a turban, you shouldn't be doing this, or you shouldn't be wearing it like this. So that obviously you're putting yourself basically in the public eye of criticism. By some people, always going to get kind of haters. Alhamdulillah, I haven't had too much of that. But then also, you know, people who do want to try, they do have a good heart and they are given suggestions from their heart. But often I think as a general theme as well with reverts is that it's not always best to say, you know, you just say, like, you can say something from your heart and well-meaning, but it doesn't always come through that way. And rightly so, you know, a lot, or someone's very new on their journey, like something that you're saying right now could be really damaging to them. So yeah, so for me, I guess it's been navigating that world of social media as well as how I've changed my lifestyle, how I've changed how I look and how I dress. I would say that's, yeah, fairly kind of unique. I guess it's just how different all of our journeys are. You know, I've been very lucky to have met a lot of revert, convert Muslims, and I, you know, in real life, especially here in Manchester, I mean, there's such an amazing community up here, which is so amazing. And I get a lot of messages on Instagram and emails, people that have watched my YouTube videos and what I share, especially in the earlier days when I first became Muslim, I shared a lot of what I was going through and things. So therefore, a lot of people do reach out to me and tell me their stories and their journeys. And I guess what just amazes me all the time is just how different people's paths are to Islam. You know, there is no one way. And, you know, and then that also goes into with reverts. Yeah, there's no one way of doing it. Like maybe, you know, a few reverts, then I think obviously born Muslims accept that everyone does things differently, you know, like some people may cover, but then they're struggling with their prayers. Some people may be on it with their prayers and then they're struggling with fasting. Like no one or the other way is right or wrong, especially when you're just trying to start everything. And you also can't do everything overnight. It's not, you can't just suddenly, it's not only that you can't, you shouldn't change and suddenly start doing everything overnight and thinking that you can. So I think that's it. I think it's just giving reverts that time to grow and to process and to learn things by themselves. And it's good to give advice, but yeah, you definitely have to be careful in being very sensitive in how you give advice, when you give advice, and in this, what situation do you give advice in, you know, not just going up to somebody in a mosque and starting to grab their hijab and trying to change, you know, like fix it for them. So I think that's it. I think it's just realizing that there's so much uniqueness to people's journeys and their paths, and there is no right or wrong on how people come to Islam and how they start their journey. I'd say definitely the community itself. And, you know, again, I'm very, very lucky up here in Manchester. We have some really amazing Revert Support community kind of groups. And even just, you know, it doesn't have to, if I give you an example of up here in Manchester, you know, which I really hope that could be spread across the world in different, especially different cities. I know some people, you know, they're Revert and they're in small towns or cities, especially in the US, where it's obviously so huge. People are not in an Islamic majority area. And even here in the UK, you know, you can be in a small rural village or city and there aren't any other Muslims around either. So I know that can be the case, but I do hope that people, I think firstly anyway, I think if you think that you're missing a community, then you should be the one that starts it. Like you can't go saying that, you know, there is no community for reverts when you haven't tried it. You know, get online, try and start a little Instagram group. It doesn't need to be anything about yourself. It is purely about like the location and reverts, and people will find that through typing in, and you can join Facebook groups and just creating a group and try and promote it that way. And find people will come, and then it will come through word of mouth. So I think firstly, that's important. And then, as I said, up here in Manchester, we're really lucky. A group that I am part of, and, you know, I'm very good friends with the sisters who created it. You know, they just simply do a breakfast every Sunday. So it's nothing religious. We don't go to the mosque. It's, you know, we chat about whatever we want, but it's just something social. And what they are very cautious of as well is that, you know, these breakfasts are only for revert or convert female Muslims or those kind of very close to reverting, because they want it to be a safe space where you can talk and a space where, you know, you can joke about that girls' holiday that you had, 10 years ago and what you got up to, because like that's important as well. You shouldn't feel like you can't talk about those things. And then, within that as well, if there are speakers here in Manchester, then we have got a WhatsApp group, we'll highlight it. Sometimes we meet for Jummah and then we go for cake afterwards. So of course we still have, religious aspects in there and we try and do things. But if you're going to have a convert group, it also doesn't have to be constantly religious. You don't have to meet up purely for religious purposes. You can meet up to socialize, have brunch, go for a coffee, go shopping. And I think that's really important as well. And being around a group where you can be free to talk and not feel judged about whether it's something in your past or whether it's you're worried about your lack of knowledge, and that you can ask questions, to each other and not have to worry. One of the biggest feedbacks I get from messages from people who've watched my YouTube or my Instagram is like, wow, I'm just like you, I look like you, or I'm from an area like you, and I also am interested in Islam, which obviously now it is great. There are more Muslims coming to the faith from different backgrounds, different ethnicities and races and things, but often you can feel like you don't look like what you'd maybe typically think a Muslim would. So again, you go on a group like this, you see like, oh wow, this is great, and some people are wearing hijab, for example, and some aren't, and again, like everyone's welcome just as they are. So I think that's really nice, and that's kind of how it's a really nice way to build an active community. No, I haven't gone through that avenue with you. But I was just going to say, again, obviously it's amazing to have a community around you in person. But like we said, I know a lot of sisters are in areas where they don't have a community around them, or maybe for some reason they kind of can't get out and meet up with people, for example. So so obviously then it comes to the online sphere. And I think, a huge benefit from lockdown was, of course, that so much went online, and that, there are multiple kind of convert spheres online that offer help. So that's amazing. Yeah, like you guys as well. So I really hope that like sisters that are in a position where they can't meet other people, or there's just no one around them, then they can turn to online resources like you, or obviously have a combination of both, which is fantastic as well. One that I'm going to say is also Revert Support also has to be by Reverts. I think I've heard of a few things recently where born Muslims have tried to set up Revert Support, and it is just not the same. Obviously you can, within the organization, you can have a mixture, but the people who kind of first run it, make decisions, do need to be Reverts, because they understand it at the end of the day. Everything like we've just spoken, you can be a born Muslim. I know a born Muslim who, I'm very close to her. Both of her parents are Reverts. So she understands, she's from the UK, she's white, she's British. She understands very much of the Revert struggles. But like she says, I'm still not a Revert. Both of my parents are. So I understand from there, but I'm still not. I was brought up a Muslim. So I still cannot relate to, even though she's so close to relating to so much, she knows that she can fully not relate. And you can't get anyone closer than that, I don't think, than that is a child of a Revert, and they still can't relate. So that just kind of proves everything as to why it is important to have these Revert communities of people who understand each other, and it is a safe space. To those people who say we're still facing the same issues, okay, you set up a platform for born Muslims who are facing those issues, like it doesn't need to be, like again, if you think there's a need for a platform, like you then create that, like you've created Solace because for Reverts. So people who kind of want to say, well, what about us? Like they should then think, let's create something for us, which I definitely think there's a need as well for born Muslims who feel like Reverts or had a similar journey to Islam at an older age. It's very similar as well, but not quite the same.